And go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell me your first and last name, where we are today, and who you're teaching.
Okay. My name is Brittany Scott, and we're at Longwood Elementary School. I am a first grade teacher.
Great. Okay, so first up, we want to understand the decisions you made in planning for this lesson and how it fits into the unit in the year. First question, how does this lesson connect to and build on students' prior skills and knowledge? What was taught before this lesson and what will come after it?
We've been practicing different types of word problems. There are several different types of word problems where the unknown, the students don't know the unknown, or their phrase like, there are 3 apples and 4, I need to do that again.
Sure. You want me to read it again?
Yeah.
Okay. How does the lesson connect to and build on students' prior skills and knowledge? What was taught before this lesson and what will come after it?
Before this lesson, we did several different word problems where we practice. And really, it's not just about kids knowing the answer. We practice actually solving it, telling how you solved it, illustrating how you solved it. So we actually practice the process of going through the problems and making sure that kids are able to talk about the problems. And so that led up to this lesson where kids were able to talk about what they did, and they went through struggles, but they were able to talk about the steps that they took. And that's really what my goal was, for them to be able to not just solve the problem, but be able to talk about how they solved the problem. So that's basically how I came to this lesson today.
Good.
Did that answer?
Discuss the sequence of lessons that surround this one lesson.
Well, we start off with very basic word problems, and as we continue on, we gradually go to more complicated word problems, and then after we go to more complicated, we kind of mix them together. So the whole purpose is that they don't do the problems in isolation. They should have problems, all different types of problems. So we kind of did a build up until we got to the harder problems, and then mixed them together so that kids would have the opportunity to solve the different types of problems.
Good, you're doing good. Let's see. Talk about the standards or cluster targeted in this lesson. What did you do to make the lesson reflect the full intent of that standard or cluster?
So the 2 standards that I targeted were standards 10A1 and 10A2, and those standards basically talked about kids should be able to add and subtract within 20, and then kids should be able to add up to 3 different numbers. And so basically, I covered all of the different types of problems that these standards incorporated. So kids would have a variety of different problems to solve.
Which of the core action indicators do you think this lesson best exemplified, and how do you plan for this?
Okay, I'm going to take a break for one.
Let me recording. Do you want me to read it again?
I think I'm okay.
Okay.
I pose very high quality. I think that this, I'm sorry, I need to do it again.
Sure.
The lesson best exemplified core action 2. I pose very high quality questions, and the kids actually started off by watching me do high quality questions, solving it, illustrating, telling how I solved it, and then I allowed them to do this problems like that, where they were talking about their thinking and solving problems. So I think that it really zeroed in on the kids' work and me pulling examples of different children's works, and maybe they did the same problem but they had a different path of how they got to the answer, but they came up with the same equation and the same answer. So basically just pulling out that student work, modeling, letting them see what it looks like, those really exemplify the core action 2.
Next set of questions. We're interested in how the shifts required by the CCSS are being incorporated into your classroom. First question, discuss how this lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
Okay. I know this is a very cliche statement, but the mile wide, inch deep, I think that that's what we did before. I think that we didn't go deeper. I remember back when I used to teach first grade before Common Core, we would have very basic word problems where it became so rote that the kids would just be able to pull out the numbers and not even read the problem. Whereas now with Common Core, the word problems are so complex that the kids actually have to go through and they actually have to read the problems to make sure that they understand what the problem is asking. And then there's also problems where it's not telling you everything. It's giving you two parts but not the whole, or it's giving you a part in the whole but not one of the other parts. And so the kids have to really ask themselves, am I answering this question correctly? Am I reading it correctly? And so that's basically it.
Okay.
I kind of forgot part.
The question is, discuss how the lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
Okay, so should I do that one again?
Do you want to?
I think it's okay. Did I answer it?
I feel like you did.
Okay. Then I should have went back and said, and that's kind of how the shifts. Well, it's
Do you
fine.
want to pick it up from there?
Yeah.
Okay, let's just pick up on the shifts a little bit. Go ahead.
Okay, and that's kind of how the shifts happen, where we went from simple to more complex, where there's more rigor. The kids are actually thinking about their thinking and actually being able to explain and justify what they did and to go back and check their answers. And that's really that high level critical thinking that we really want our kids to do, particularly in first grade.
Good. How did you teach the content of this lesson prior to the CCSS? What is the same and what's different?
Prior to Common Core, I would teach it where I would pull out different things that the kids, like for example, if it was an addition a number story, I might say, well, you look for these words when you're doing an addition number story, and you look for these words when you're doing a subtraction. And the word problems were very basic, and I would kind of teach it like that. But now with Common Core, you're not teaching the kids to pull out words to figure out what the problem is asking. They need to really go into the problem and to understand what the problem is asking, so that they can they could do the problem effectively. So before it was a simpler way of doing it where it was very structured, where I give them a problem, it looked the same pretty much every time, and they knew addition, subtraction, so it wasn't as complex.
Okay. Student engagement is crucial to the work of the CCSS. We want to understand how you ensured that all students had the opportunity to productively engage in the work of the lesson. How did the students handle this lesson? Did they understand the mathematics of the lesson, and how do you know?
Okay. I think that the students did well with understanding. I saw that some students struggled with the understanding, which is okay. And I teach my students that it's okay to struggle through it. You know, that's all a part of learning. That's all a process. But we've been talking a lot about building our stamina. So I do believe that the kids stuck with it and they continued on, even though it got hard for others. They worked together. They helped one another. So. Okay. I never know how to end it.
Nobody does.
Okay.
Not just you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so next question is, explain how you differentiated in this lesson. Did all students have opportunities to work on grade level content? If all students did not have this, okay, so let's just do this. Explain how you differentiated in this lesson. Did all students have the opportunities to work on grade level content?
Mm-hmm. Well, the day before the lesson, students that felt like they had a deep understanding, we practiced doing different word problems before, and the students that felt they had a deep understanding would partner up with students that felt that they needed a little bit of help. They could read the problem, they could understand it, but they just needed a little bit of assistance. So they partnered together, and then I had a group of students that could not read the problems. They needed assistance with reading the problems and understanding the problems, so I work with that group. So every child is at a different place in their learning, so I try to differentiate to meet those students' needs. It was very good for the high kids to work with the kids that needed a little of assistance, because then that helped them to explain their thinking and to explain the process. So that's how I differentiate it.
And then continuing on that, if all students did not have this opportunity, please explain why.
The group that I was working with on the floor, we didn't get to all the problems, and we will continue to get to them the next day, tomorrow. But we didn't get through everything because I found that when we were working on problems, we had to talk about the different problems. So that was the group that didn't get to every type of problem. But again, it's just the process of them making sure that they understand before I move on. And so I saw that they were having a little difficulty with some of them. And so I slowed down, and we will get to the rest later. So that was just the group that didn't get to everything.
Which behaviors from Core Action 3 did the students best exemplify in this lesson? And what actions have you taken as a teacher to make that happen?
Okay, this is where I need to pause a little.
Okay, I'm going to cut for a minute.
Okay, students persisted through the problems. I didn't have to tell them keep going. Some of them got frustrated through it, but they persisted through it. Before even teaching word problems, I always teach kids to build their stamina. You have to persist through even when you feel frustrated. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Students,
and then I'll refer to a Core Action 3. Which
okay. Should I start again?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, and okay. In Core Action 3, students persisted through the problems. They didn't give up. They continued on. I saw some frustration in some of the students, but they did not give up. And then also they used appropriate tools when solving the problems. I let students choose what tool do they think is going to best help them get to the correct answer. So they use the different tools. They use different manipulatives depending on what worked for them.
Thank you. All right, we're getting there.
Okay.
Would you like to comment on any of the students' submitted work? Was there something that delighted or surprised you with this work? So when you were going around, whatever they were documenting.
Okay. Would it be, I could say, some of the students struggled. I saw students helping one, and I don't know.
Yeah. Let me read it again, and then let's see what comes from you. Would you like to comment on any of the Would you like to comment on any of the students' work? Was there something that delighted you or surprised you with this work?
Mm-hmm. Okay. With the group that I was working with on the floor, I was so thrilled to see that they were actually getting it. It's been a process with them, for them to think abstract. They had a hard time thinking outside of the box, but today I saw one of my students in particular really shining through and really understanding what the problem was asking, and that was really my end goal, for him to understand what the problem was asking and realizing that they're not all solved the same way. And then with the group that was working in pairs, I did notice that some of my students struggled a little bit while others did not struggle, and just having to work through the problem solving, I did notice that some of them did struggle with it.
Great instructors are continuously learning. We want to understand what you celebrated in this lesson and what you would improve upon. Reflecting on the lesson, what worked particularly well and what might you do differently?
What worked particularly well, I loved how I went around and saw the student work, and they really understood how to write what they did. They understood how to illustrate it and to solve the problems, and not just write the answer. So I thought that was very nice to see that finally coming into fruition, that they're able to basically explain their thinking. One of the things that I would change is really practicing the conversation piece between students. In first grade, it's more challenging to have students conversate with one another and to share their thinking. So that's just something that we're going to continue to practice when they are discussing their thinking, taking turns, and making sure that they are saying the right things, but actually verbalizing what they're saying. They did very good with writing what they were saying, but actually we'll do more practice with verbalizing what they're saying.
And last question, were there any surprises or unexpected student behaviors or reactions? No?
Not really. I mean, I was surprised, but I don't know if I want to say.
Go for it.
Okay.
Is there something that you someone that stood out to you today? I mean, you did discuss.
Can I say a name or?
Yeah, of course.
One of my students, Tajon, really stood out to me. I was so happy with the way he was answering questions. He really understood the problems, and he was one of the kids that was working with me in this small group on the floor. I was really impressed with the way that he understood, and it took a while for Tajon to get to that place, and so I think that he's ready to transition into doing it more independently. He was able to read the problems and really pull out what the question was asking, and I was really thrilled about that. Another student that comes to mind is Jenna. Jenna, same thing. She was able to really understand the problem, and I think that she's kind of ready to go to that next step of working independently with word problems. So it was so nice to see, after practicing, some of the students really shining in that particular area.
Well done. Thank you.
Oh gosh.
Good job.